The Grand Prix Drivers Association has written an open letter to the president of the global governing body for motorsports asking for F1 drivers to be treated as adults and not children, after being told by the motorsport governing body's president to mind their language during news conferences. Defending F1 champion Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc were among those sanctioned for swearing amid an apparent crackdown on F1 drivers, following which the Grand Prix Drivers Association, GPDA, wrote a letter to FIA President Mohammed bin Sulayem saying he needed to consider his own tone and language as well. In its open letter to the president of the global governing body for motorsports, the GPDA also called for racers to be treated like adults, including on trivial matters such as wearing jewelry. With regards to swearing, there is a difference between swearing intended to insult others and more casual swearing, such as you might use to describe bad weather, or indeed an inanimate object such as a Formula One car or a driving situation. We urge the president to also consider his own tone and language when talking to our member drivers, or indeed about them, whether in a public forum or otherwise. Verstappen was ordered to perform an act of public interest at the Singapore Grand Prix in September, after using an expletive to describe his Red Bull car in a news conference. That was shortly after bin Sulayem had said there was too much swearing in F1. Verstappen protested the ruling by giving brief, vague answers in his next news conference. Ferrari driver Leclerc was fined by the stewards at the Brazilian Grand Prix last week for a similar comment at the previous race in Mexico. The GPDA said it wanted more clarity from the FIA and bin Sulayem about where the money raised from fining drivers is spent. Bin Sulayem's stance on swearing has drawn criticism before. Seven-time champion Lewis Hamilton said in September there was a racial element to the way bin Sulayem had sought to contrast F1 with rap music in an interview with motorsport.com, explaining why the FIA would push back against swearing. The FIA has previously tried to enforce a ban on jewelry, which prompted Hamilton to turn up to a race wearing multiple necklaces, watches, and rings in protest, and has reminded drivers to wear approved fireproof underclothes. The FIA expanded its ability to punish drivers under the term of misconduct under President Mohammed bin Sulayem, who has looked to clamp down on bad language used in official settings. He previously courted controversy for explaining in an interview this was because the sport should differentiate between our sport, motorsport, and rap music, to which Lewis Hamilton responded by suggesting was stereotypical language that included a racial element. On behalf of the directors and chairman of the GPDA, on behalf of the Grand Prix drivers, the letter said, "As is the case with every sport, competitors must abide by the referee's decision, whether they agree with it or not. That is how sport works. The drivers, our members, are no different and fully understand that." The letter added, "The GPDA has, on countless occasions, expressed its view that driver monetary fines are not appropriate for our sport. For the past 3 years, we have called upon the FIA president to share the details and strategy regarding how the FIA's financial fines are allocated and where the funds are spent. We have also relayed our concerns about the negative image financial fines bring to the sport. We once again request the FIA president provide financial transparency and direct, open dialogue with us. All stakeholders, FIA, F1, the teams, and the GPDA, should jointly determine how and whether the money is spent for the benefit of the sport." Well, Karan Chandak has a different view on this. In an interview, he said the statement of solidarity was very strong. But in my view, there are more important things in Formula One. This thing about the cursing and the jewelry and underpants and all that, I'm not sure if that is really the most serious issue for drivers in F1. Chandak continued to stress the more important issues are those on track, with racing guidelines and regulations still very open for debate ahead of 2025. I think the most serious issue should be about the guidelines for racing, track limits, creating tracks with natural deterrents like gravel in key places, and creating clear and fair rules for everybody to go racing that everyone understands, he continued. Those are much more important issues. So honestly, I really didn't pay much attention to this whole thing about the swearing and the underpants and the jewelry. These are not the biggest issues in our sport at the moment. It is important to note that the drivers have been vocal about new racing rules, with Russell stating that 19 out of the 20 drivers agree on what should change. This came after the controversy surrounding the penalties handed out to Verstappen and Lando Norris at the US and Mexican Grand Prix. Now coming to the president, With his re-election approaching in 12 months, Ben Sulayem appears well-positioned due to the FLA's voting structure. Each motorsport federation worldwide holds a single vote, meaning smaller federations, often receptive to incentives, hold equal power to major ones. This system allows Ben Sulayem to secure support from these smaller unions, likely guaranteeing his second term. The Formula One drivers, aware they may need to contend with Ben Sulayem for years to come, have tried to address his approach for the past 3 years. However, their statement signals that patience has worn thin, and they are now pushing firmly for adjustments. Despite Ben Sulayem's perception of control, the drivers hold significant leverage. Formula One is crucial to the FIA, and driver discontent could lead to notable issues. One potential scenario is drivers choosing to skip the FIA Awards Gala in Rwanda, leaving trophies unclaimed on stage, an unmistakable message from the drivers to the FIA. The drivers' unified statement gives Ben Sulayem one last opportunity to address their frustrations. For the Emirati president, it's a critical moment to avoid an open conflict with F1's key figures, the sport's most valuable assets. What I think is that all the drivers are adults and they know what to do and what to say. If there is any law that FIA thinks is inappropriate, then it should have been already mentioned in the code of conduct. I mean, why do they come up with different rules every time? FIA's priority should be on developing clean and fair track rules and a penalty system. There are so many loopholes in the system. I don't know why they are after drivers, and what I also think is this open letter is a final call for FIA that drivers are not going to listen to these craps, and FIA may face further consequences if they don't change. Let me know your views on this. See you all in my next video. Until then, like, share, and subscribe. Take care, bye.